It's My Nerd World and Depeche Mode, the podcast. This week on the show, October press conference. Confirmed, not confirmed, happening, not happening. I'll let you know what I know. Plus, we have some more tour and album rumors to share and your listener feedback this week.
My Nerd World.
It is My Nerd World, and welcome to it. Depeche Mode, the podcast, and I'm your host, Jon Justice. Glad you were with another episode this week. And I can't thank you enough for those that have written into the show, TalkShowNerd at gmail.com, or left a comment up on YouTube if you happen to be listening there. I had intended on doing another show sooner than the one that you're currently listening to. Unfortunately, I ended up back in the hospital. I'm doing fine. I will explain at the end of the show this week what exactly happened. So for those that want to stick around to hear all of the gruesome, gory details, again, I'll share that with you at the end of the episode. As always, if you want to support My Nerd World, head on over to mynerdworld.net. That's my official website for all things relating to My Nerd World, including this podcast, the Star Wars podcast that I do, and the science fiction space opera series, EMBARK. 7 books in the series. In all, the main protagonist is, while set in the future, a massive Depeche Mode fan. And again, for those that are newer listeners to the show, I'll give you details about my books a little bit later on and how you can support the show by purchasing your preferred copy of the books. In the meantime, let's get to at least what I know about the rumored upcoming information, album, and tour from my band, and from my favorite band and your favorite band. So, over the course of the past few weeks, somebody had put together what I don't believe was being put out in public as authentic, and yet some individuals were taking it as authentic. There's been this rumor of an October 4th press conference by the band where potentially a new album and tour will be announced, and we could perhaps get some first listens to snippets of new music, and even what a potential logo or the new branding of the band might look like. This is what the band has done over the course of the past decade with their recent releases. Some really interesting commentary on depeche-mode.com on the Halo forum among fans that I found was a fun read, just discussing the validity or necessity or lack thereof of having these types of press conferences. And a couple of the posters had mentioned that a lot of this comes down to the promotional groups that the band works with. And this is why they do these press conferences, where a lot of other bands don't. They just simply announce the album's coming out here and the tour starts here. Whereas Depeche Mode typically, as I said, they usually, pre-promote a press conference. They give us some snippets of songs. We sometimes get a taste of what, again, the branding, the new artwork's going to look like, and then we get an announcement of how large or small the potential tour is going to be. So somebody had put together a graphic of Martin and Dave, of a recent photo, might have been off the last tour, of Martin and Dave, with the details, doing that thing with my fingers, of this October press conference. Well, Richard Blade, former host of K-Rock Radio, which is one of the most prominent radio stations, next to probably, is it WNEW out of New York? But K-Rock, obviously, massive in promotion of Depeche Mode in the 80s and through the 90s. And Richard Blade was a staple of that radio station for decades. Has a relationship with the band. And I know some fans, get kind of annoyed at Richard Blade. He had shared some comments via a private text exchange that he allegedly had with Martin Gore after the passing of Andrew Fletcher. And I know some fans kind of took issue with that, understandably so. So he had initially tweeted out the details of this press conference. And I think he was basing it off of, at least that was my impression, he was basing it off of this promotional photo that had been put out online by some fan, which, again, I don't think was trying to be passed off as anything official. Well, then Richard Blade went and tweeted out that he had a text exchange with, I believe it was Martin, in which Martin explained that that was not indeed an official release. Nothing official has come out from the band, and when there is something to announce, they would announce it. It's not necessarily a denial straight up of this alleged October press conference, although it does sort of throw, water on the fire that burns in all of us and our desire to want to hear new music and see our favorite band go out and tour again. That being said, there is also, and the name escapes me, my apologies for not grabbing it before I did the show. I'm a bad podcast host because of that. But there is a remixer who apparently has close ties with the band. And he has come out and doubled down on this alleged press conference taking place. As a matter of fact, I think a friend of the show, Jon Justice, had tweeted at this particular individual, and I'm sure he or somebody else will email me and let me know who this particular person was. Again, I didn't do it before the show started. But he had basically sort of doubled down, even in the wake of Richard Blade and his sharing of the exchange with Martin Gore, of, that was not officially from us. We haven't made any announcements. When we have something to announce, we'll announce it. This remixer had said it was still his impression, and he stood by the fact that Depeche Mode was going to be doing this press conference coming up sometime in October. Listen, either way, I think that we are, months rather than a year away from getting some sort of official announcement from the band. And everybody seems to be in agreement that Martin and Dave, collectively, Depeche Mode, would not have officially released that photograph on Instagram of the two of them in Martin's Santa Barbara home if they weren't working on something. So that kind of brings us full circle to what we've been talking about on the show of, what is that going to be? Is it going to be another collection of sorts with some new singles? Is it going to be a full-fledged album? I still am leaning towards full-fledged album. Going back to the reasons that I gave on previous episodes of most likely the band's been working on material for quite a while, even before the tragic and untimely passing of Andrew Fletcher. And I would imagine, too, that through that tragedy has also probably sparked creativity, in which case even more new material could be created off of that. So again, I'm still very much in the camp that we will get information sooner than later. As always, what do you think? What do you know? What have you heard? And who was that remixer that I was referring to? Feel free to email me, talkshow@gmail.com. Or again, if you're listening to this via the YouTube video that gets posted, you can leave a comment up on YouTube and I'll grab that as well. Now, along with that, we do have quite a bit of listener feedback this week, including rumors coming from you, the listener of the show, that I want to share with everybody. Well, the first comes from Travis Hill, who writes this. Found your podcast earlier this year when looking for things to listen to after Talking Sopranos ended, and I was traveling quite a bit. Anyway, Depeche Mode have been my favorite band since I bought my first 12-inch single of Strangelove back in 1987. Bought everything since. Seen too many shows to count, and I also spent 28 years in radio as well. Wow, we got a lot in common. I have a couple of close friends who are still in the industry and have some ties to the DM camp. Everything they have told me over the years has checked out. When I asked about the post going around about the October 4th presser, he said he couldn't confirm it, but he did not rule it out. Also, he said that the album is a lot further along than people realize, and had me go to a website he gave me and found this. And what this looks to be, if I click on the link here again, it looks to be some type of touring company client list. And I'm going to pull this up here, and unfortunately my Safari is acting slow, which is much to the chagrin of my family. One of the things I hate the worst is when my family comes to use my main computer downstairs, and for whatever reason, I love Macs, but every single Macintosh that I've gotten, like a big one, it always, once it's loaded and up and running, it's fine, but for some reason, it's just turtle slow when it comes to getting everything up and loaded as I try to fill the gap while this webpage loads. So the website's loaded now, and what it appears to be is some sort of touring group, Sandwiches Touring LLP. And when you go list on here, it lists David Gahan, a corresponding address, and it gives a recent date of May 13, 2022 as being a member of this. It also has Martin Gore on here as well. Same thing, May 13, 2022. And it also has listed of Andrew Fletcher, and it has his appointed on May 13th, but it does have him resigned as of July 5th, 2022, as a member of this organization. And again, it looks like some type of touring company. So take that for what it's worth. Now, getting back to Travis's email, he goes on to say, that's the touring company. Here's my details. Again, for those that don't know, I treat this podcast like I do my Monday through Friday radio show. So I often don't proofread these emails because I like to have it sort of presented to me fresh. So that's a touring company DM set up in May. Anyone who's in a real functioning band will set up different companies for things: record sales, merchandise sales, publishing, and touring. In July, they removed Fletch, and I can only imagine that is his estate that is now in his place. So this all goes hand in hand with Peter Too, T-O-O, who is a frequent poster, commenter on Depeche Mode, has been for, again, like decades now. Found quite a bit on Twitter and on the Depeche-Mode.com forum page. This goes hand in hand with Peter Too's post about the stages being ordered and the rumors of producers negotiating with the band. So at this point, I am now convinced we will have a full tour along with an album. Happy sleuthing and looking forward to future episodes, Travis. Thank you so much for that, Travis. And again, this aligns with, my speculation and what a lot of people have been saying as well. All right, next we move on to Michael, who writes, wow, thank you so much for reading my email out loud. I can't believe my message made the Australian-New Zealand episode. Just as a follow-up, I didn't tell you how I managed to get into Depeche Mode, a strange one, but I was in high school in 1988, and I was organizing the music for a play called Murder in the Cathedral. A French-Canadian exchange student suggested Pimpf would work, and that was perfect. But I was astonished this was the same band I'd heard a few years earlier. One listen of Music for the Masses, and I was hooked. We'll never forget the front row at the Devotional Tour in Melbourne, and managed to also catch the Singles Tour show in London in the late 90s. Too many songs to list as my favorites, but this week, my current top three are Inside In Your Room and Cover Me. Anyway, as far as touring in Australia and costs, it's not insurmountable. In the same period since Depeche Mode has toured Australia, I've seen U2 on 4 different tours, Radiohead on 3 different tours, Sugar Ross, I always forget if I pronounce that correctly or not, on 5 different tours, just to name a few. Australians typically know they have to pay a little more on base ticket prices for the privilege. Also, we now have some more Depeche-sized venues than we did in the past. I can imagine them doing a 3-show tour like the Byron Festival and a Sydney-Melbourne show, because they are huge cities and enough of a population to support the fan base. So maybe there is some hope. Thanks again for the podcast. Cheers, Michael. Thank you so much, Michael. I appreciate it. Stephanie writes, it's a great feeling that being a Depeche Mode fan for 27 years is nearly like being a family member, a member of something very special. And I guess I do not only talk for me. Depeche Mode has always been my anchor, something stable when times are tough, like right now all over the world and also in Germany. And for sure, they are always there when times in my own life are tough. I suffer from autoimmune disease and got through special times with Depeche Mode. Keep thinking that your heart disease is going to be better day by day. All the best for you. Greetings from Germany, Stephanie. And as I've talked about on the show, and one thing that I feel really blessed that new people have found the show. And I've been able to share your thoughts and my thoughts on a more consistent basis after starting this podcast several years ago and kind of doing it off and on. And as I've mentioned with my ongoing heart issues, including my recent stint in the hospital, I have to laugh so I don't cry. Again, I'll tell you the story at the end of the show, but Depeche Mode just brings us all together. And I'm a fandom of a lot of things. As I mentioned, being a Star Wars fan and covering politics Monday through Friday, Depeche Mode fandoms tend to be very caustic, unfortunately. I tend to love everything. I kind of treat Star Wars as and I was meaning Star Wars. If I said Depeche Mode, my apologies. Star Wars fans tend to be caustic and very divisive about new Star Wars content that's put out there. I treat Star Wars in a lot the same way that I do Depeche Mode. It's all good, even the stuff that I don't necessarily like as much as other things. And I don't get too hung up on the nuances, especially if you listen to my Star Wars podcast. You know that. But that certainly is the case with Depeche Mode, and I just love that we can blow past everything as fans of this band and look past all of our differences and really just share in this enjoyment of this incredible band that has touched our lives in so many unique and special ways and continues to do so. All right, lastly, we hear from Carolyn, who writes, I could yak about Depeche Mode and music generally for hours. I'm such fun at parties. I'm pleased to hear your novels have sold well here, as I mentioned on last week's show in Australia. My husband reads nothing but sci-fi classics, and historical fiction and nonfiction is my preference, though I do love H.G. Wells. So I will recommend your novels to him. He churns through books at a cracking pace and seems to have a to-be-read list about a mile long, so he might have read them without me knowing. Cheers, Carolyn. Thank you so much, Carolyn. I really do appreciate it. All right, so listen, that wraps up the core of the show this week. If you have anything you want to share, and thank you so much for everybody that's written in, again, talkshownerd@gmail.com. That's the email address, or leave a comment up on YouTube. So a couple of quick things. First off, why did I end up in the hospital? So this previous weekend, Thursday going into Friday, and again, I have to laugh now. I'm just happy to be home because I ended up in the hospital for about as long as I was in for my third open heart surgery. I ended up catching a fever overnight, Thursday into Friday. I had suffered some damage where they went into my leg via the bypass. When they do a bypass for your heart, when they have to turn your heart off for the surgery, they have to make a rather large incision in your leg, in your groin area, in order to put you on the bypass heart machine. And sometimes that can cause damage. And it's a typical thing that happens, unfortunately. Well, that happened to me in the last surgery, even though it didn't happen to me in the first two. The inside of my thigh is now numb. They don't know if the feeling's going to come back, which is not a big deal. But I also had quite a bit of swelling in that region because the lymph nodes in that area, and here's your too much information, the lymph nodes in that area were damaged. That swelling eventually goes down. It's just the lymph nodes don't know how to reabsorb the fluid that gets released. So that fluid was almost gone completely away. Well, when I got sick, that part of my leg began to swell again. The assumption was whatever I got, whether it was the flu or perhaps it was COVID, which it wasn't, it triggered my lymph nodes, as they do, to react to whatever I'm fighting, and then it caused the swelling. Well, it turns out as the weekend went by that I started to get a lot of, and that's an understatement, I mean, it was excruciating pain in my leg. I ended up admitting myself into the hospital on Tuesday of last week, and basically I had a massive infection. Don't know how I got it. Sometimes those, just infections end up getting through to the skin, and that fluid that was in there got infected and turned into a massive abscess. They were delayed on doing the surgery because I'm on blood thinners, and my blood was too thin for them to go in and do the work. So I was there from Tuesday through until Sunday, which was just, after already being in the hospital 3 months before for a week, to be in there for another week was just, I'm not going to lie, it was tough to take. It's one of those moments where Depeche Mode comes through. Try walking in my shoes, man. Just give me a pain that I'm used to. However, I'm doing better now. They were able to get rid of it. They were able to they were able to pinpoint exactly what I was infected with, put me on some heavy antibiotics. Right now, unfortunately, I'm on this wound vac. So I got this little machine that's attached to my leg where the wound is, but it is supposed to assist in the healing process, so that's good. I'm just glad to be home, even though I have to lug down this machine that's sucking on my leg 24 hours a day, which just sounds really weird to say. So that's why I ended up back in the hospital and why you didn't get a podcast as soon as I would have liked. But it worked out well because I was able to actually find out a little bit more information than I did before. All right, so before I let you go, if you want to support my nerd world, if you're like Carolyn's husband and you read sci-fi and you love Depeche Mode, I hope you will treat yourself, a friend, or a family member to my EMBARK science fiction space opera series. It is a series written for adults, but it is suitable for ages 11 plus. Think Star Wars in terms of your violence, and there's no explicit content or language in the books. All 7 books in the completed series are available in hardcover, paperback, and audiobook at Amazon.com, or you can hit the link at mynerdworld.net. I wrote these books because of my love of science fiction, but they also were inspired in part because of my love of Depeche Mode. Depeche Mode plays a large part in the underlying themes of the story, and the main character himself, Taft Gardia, as I mentioned, is a massive Depeche Mode fan at a time when the music of the 1980s through 2000s is nostalgic in this world set in the future and popular among the characters of the story. The stories feature references to your favorite band and my favorite band, both direct and indirect, while telling an exciting sci-fi space opera saga. The description for book 1 goes as follows. Taft has found something and humanity won't survive without it. The only thing that matters to Taft Gardia, as much as his beloved ship, is fellow pilot Keith Amaro. He'll need both more than he can imagine when a freak industrial accident sends the planet spiraling toward the apocalypse. Taft soon finds himself unwittingly attached to an emerging galactic conflict as factions form and battle lines are drawn during the global evacuation. Earth's evacuees face annihilation and will push man and machine to their limits. Yet, having uncovered what may be the key to their survival, Taft might be humanity's last hope for survival among the stars. If you like your sci-fi epic with a little bit of romance, filled with action and Depeche Mode references, EMBARK is perfect for you. Again, head on over to mynerdworld.net or Amazon.com. Look for EMBARK, Jon Justice. Also, you can follow me on social media. You can find me on Facebook, Jon Justice. Also on Twitter, I got a couple of accounts. At Jon Justice is my main account, but I also use that for radio. At the My Nerd World is my other Twitter account. You can also find me on TikTok at the Jon Justice, and on Instagram at the Jon Justice as well. So follow me. I'll follow you back. Thank you so much for checking out the show. Looking forward to hearing from you between now and the next episode. And anyways, I hope wherever you are happy, you are healthy, and you are safe. We'll talk to you again real soon. Bye.
My Nerd World.